Right now at 6, a new twist in the legal battle over troops in the Rose City.
It's kind of dangerous. You know the saying, you come at the king, you better not miss.
Plus, a mother speaks out after her son's aid mission to Gaza is intercepted by Israeli forces.
It's been really terrifying, and I don't know where he is or what's happening.
Then, some small signs of improvement for Portland public students.
We saw growth in all subject areas across our district.
And later, how Washington County Sheriff's deputies are now experimenting with AI.
It took him about 15 to 20 minutes for a report that would typically take him about an hour and a half.
First at 6, significant developments related to the president's order to send National Guard troops to the Rose City. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Molko. Let's get you up to speed, starting with the judge assigned to hear Oregon's legal challenge to stop the deployment, recusing himself, making way for a new judge who turns out is a Trump appointee. We'll have more on that in just a minute. Plus, a Portland woman is now facing charges for assaulting a federal officer. She's accused of punching the agent in the jaw after being detained outside the ICE facility. And new at 6, Multnomah County DA Nathan Vasquez is weighing in on the federal court challenge, saying in part, quote, "The deployment of federal personnel not trained in local policing to the streets of Portland risks creating, not mitigating, the very conditions it is alleged to target." Let's go right to Kyle Aboshi, live outside the Portland ICE building. Kyle, before we get to the court case, how are things looking right now?
David, again tonight, a relatively small demonstration, maybe 24 peaceful protesters out here. No word on when the National Guard might arrive. This as we prepare for a big day tomorrow, an emergency hearing in federal court.
Just hours before the state of Oregon heads to federal court, seeking a temporary restraining order to block the deployment of federal troops in Portland, the Trump administration filed a motion asking the judge to step aside. The Fed suggests Judge Michael Simon recuse himself from the case to avoid the appearance of partiality. Judge Simon is married to Representative Suzanne Bonamici.
We do not need and we do not want federal troops here in Oregon.
On Saturday, the Democratic Congresswoman from Oregon spoke out against President Trump's deployment, ordering 200 members of the Oregon National Guard into federal service for 60 days.
This is a gross abuse of power by the president. He does not have the authority to send military troops to a city.
Lewis and Clark law professor Tong Yin explains judges often recuse themselves if there's an obvious conflict of interest, like stock ownership or a close relationship to a party. But asking a judge to step aside is a slippery slope.
It's kind of dangerous. You know the saying, you come at the king, you better not miss. If you file a recusal motion, you're basically laying out to the judge the idea that I don't think you can be fair.
Thursday afternoon, the case was reassigned to Judge Karen Immergut. For several months, a small group of demonstrators has gathered in front of the ICE facility in South Portland, leading to occasional clashes with federal agents protecting the building. Oregon's Attorney General filed a lawsuit and sought a restraining order trying to block Trump from deploying troops. At a hearing Friday, the state is expected to argue the deployment is unlawful. Oregon and Portland will suffer irreparable harm, and local police have the situation under control. Portland Police Chief Bob Day echoed that argument Monday.
I don't see the need for the National Guard at this time.
The Trump administration will likely counter that protesters have caused damage to the ICE facility, hurt agents protecting the building, and interfered with federal employees doing their work.
There are a lot of questions heading into tomorrow's hearing. What will the judge do, and how will that decision be made? When even? The judge could make that decision from the bench right there and then, could be hours or days later, or whenever the judge wants. Either way, we'll be watching closely.
Now, with that clock ticking on the National Guard deployment, Kyle Aboshi on the South Waterfront. Thank you, Kyle. By the way, Judge Karen Immergut, the federal judge who will hear tomorrow's case, was appointed by President Trump in 2019. Before joining the federal bench, Immergut served as a judge on the Multnomah County Circuit Court for 10 years. And prior to that, she was the U.S. Attorney for Oregon, appointed by President George W. Bush. Okay, let's talk about arrests at the ICE facility now, because local officials continue to point to the fact that they believe the president's perception of events on the ground does not reflect the reality, though it turns out tracking who is detained or arrested and why Well, that isn't always straightforward. Tim Gordon's here. Tim, putting the politics of this aside, there are so many agencies involved and so many moving parts.
Yeah, David, there really are. You know, at times protesters are interacting with city police, county deputies, or federal agents. And each agency handles arrests differently. That makes it harder for the public and journalists to track exactly what's happening. So we want to explain what we know about the arrests so you can better understand what's happening. Most of the video that you've seen of law enforcement around the ICE building in South Portland involves federal officers. They're responsible for securing that federal facility and enforcing federal law around the building. That includes relatively minor charges like trespassing and more serious offenses like assaulting a federal officer. But our reporting has found that in many cases, those taken into custody are not formally charged. And that's why you might hear about an arrest in one moment, but never see it in a courtroom. Now, for example, the U.S. Attorney announced this morning that a woman was in federal court yesterday on a felony offense of assaulting a federal officer on Tuesday night at the ICE facility. In contrast, we also got a statement from the Department of Homeland Security saying that 6 people had been arrested for various offenses Tuesday night, but with no names or details. Without those names, we really can't track them in the federal judicial system. And if they have not been booked and held at the Multnomah County Jail, well, we don't know if they've been detained. Now, we also have seen Portland police operate at times in the areas around ICE. Their mission is to enforce state laws, not directly to protect the federal facility. And generally speaking, Portland police shares the names of people that they arrest, which allows us to track their cases through the state courts. Our commitment is to ask those questions every day so the community understands who's making the arrests and what happens next. David?
Absolutely something we continue to commit to. Tim, appreciate it. Stay with KGW, by the way, for continuing coverage ahead of tomorrow's critical court hearing and any updates from the ICE facility, along with the deployment of the National Guard. We'll have the latest here on KGW.com and on our free streaming TV app. That is KGW+. In your headlines this evening, that is Israeli forces using water cannons on a flotilla carrying aid to Gaza last night before they detained dozens of people. Paul Reed from Portland is part of the flotilla, though it's unclear where he is right now. His mother, Jan, says while she hasn't been able to get details on his whereabouts and the situation for her is terrifying, she understands her son's priorities.
Their main concern and their main focus is the people of Gaza. And Paul has told us repeatedly, whatever I go through is nothing compared to what the Palestinians have gone through.
The flotilla included more than 40 boats and nearly 500 activists, including climate activist Greta Thunberg, who was also taken into custody. Israel called the mission a provocation, while supporters say it was intended to deliver humanitarian aid and draw attention to the blockade. Multnomah County is set to receive nearly $5 million over the next 9 years from the Purdue Pharma and Sackler family settlement. The money will fund addiction prevention and recovery programs. Leaders say they will invest every dollar in life-saving services from treatment beds and recovery support to naloxone distribution and public awareness campaigns. And Wells Fargo is laying off 50 workers at its downtown Portland office. The bank has given them 60 days notice, meaning their last official day will be November 28th. This follows previous layoffs last year, 500 in Hillsborough and 220 in Salem, as the bank moves to consolidate its operations.